More than 6 weeks since Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who entered the United States illegally, was deported from Maryland to a prison in El Salvador, which is where Abrego Garcia is from. Since then, there's been a dragged-out legal fight between Abrego Garcia's lawyers and the Justice Department. There have been reports about allegations of domestic abuse against Abrego Garcia, which the White House points as to the reason he shouldn't be allowed back. There's been so many twists and turns in this case. Joining us now to break it all down for us, Russ Contreras, who covers justice and race for Axios. Russell, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon here on WJLA 24/7.
Good to be with you.
Let's start with that new order from a judge that the discovery process can go forward. What do you think this means for the case?
Well, this means that the case is just going to continue to be punted and played out in the courts. The administration is maintaining that although it made a mistake, it was the right thing to do in deporting Mr. Abrego Garcia. His lawyers are saying, look, no matter what you say, if you have other allegations of any wrongdoing, fine, let it play out in the court. When you have some any sort of suspicion of breaking the law or having a crime, you have to have it played out in court in due process. Just like President Trump. President Trump maintained while he was out of office that he was being persecuted by political opponents, and he had a role in the courts to prove his innocence. What Abrego Garcia's attorneys are saying is that allow him to do the same thing.
Do you think that the narrative has changed on this case? I mean, we've seen a couple of the new documents being released about the domestic violence allegations and the orders of protection that were taken out. Do you feel in the 6 weeks that the narrative has changed on this?
Well, I think the narrative has become much more complicated. Look, the way it was portrayed at first is the administration wrongly deported a father who was just going about his business, who had a right to be here, who had a stay. It's changed because the administration is trying to change the narrative and refocus on the character of Abrego Garcia. We see this a lot with cities whenever there's a police shooting, for example. If the suspect is wrongly shot by police, the police department in that locale will say, well, the guy wasn't an angel, that sort of thing. This is kind of the same territory. The administration this week released more details that there were other allegations, at least 6 allegations of abuse from 2019 to 2021. There were court filings. His lawyers say, Abrego Garcia's lawyer says, look, maybe that's the case. If you have any evidence, try him in court. We need to focus on the key thing is that he was wrongly deported to a prison in El Salvador. He doesn't want to be there. He was allowed to stay here. Bring him back. And if you have any other case, let's litigate it in court where it belongs.
We just heard from Abrego Garcia's wife just a few minutes ago, her urgent plea to bring him home. What is it going to take for this to actually happen? It just sort of seems like it's stuck in neutral at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be stuck in neutral. What I believe is happening is that both sides are looking at opinion polls. Trump maintains, he did an interview this week or last week with ABC where he maintained, look, he admitted he could bring him back at any moment, but he wasn't a good person to do so. He wasn't going to risk it. Public opinion has been swayed. A lot of folks believe, look, maybe this guy wasn't the perfect saint that we thought he was or portrayed, that it's more complicated. But he was wrongly played. He was wrongly deported to a place where the administration said U.S. citizens could go in the future, that they're considering it. So it's being played out there. The other thing that is also not mentioned as much, but it's starting to percolate, is Abrego Garcia's proponents are saying, look, the administration itself has had a number of people accused of domestic violence in its first term and second. I keep thinking of former White House Staff Secretary Rob Porter. He was accused by both of his ex-wives of physical and emotional abuse. Even Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, he was accused of sexual assault and domestic violence by his second wife. Now, both of them denied the allegations, but those are there. They were litigated in the area of public opinion. And in some cases, Trump officials resigned. They say, okay, if this happened to these officials, Abrego Garcia also needs his day in court.
Yeah, and so you have no sense of if the Trump administration is going to listen to what the Supreme Court said and actually try and bring this guy back. You have no timeline on that or anything.
No.
I think everyone just wants to know that question.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be the great that's the great unknown. Look, it may come to a case where it could be a game of chicken, where the Supreme Court says you have to do this, and the Trump administration says make me. and then we'll have a constitutional crisis. This is one area where the constitutional crisis could rear its ugly head. This case is one of many, so I think it may come down to that. Right now, the court has held back and say you must somehow orchestrate his return back to the United States. They're not ordering him yet and saying you must do this, this, and that. They're sort of in this gray area. Once we cross that line, that's where we're going to have problems.
Anything else you'd like to say on this case, or any parallels you can draw to any of your other reporting you've done in cases like this, or are there not any parallels here?
No, we're in brand new territory, but this also goes at a time where the federal government is rescinding, or had rescinded, the student visas of a lot of legal residents. Now they push back on that. This has drawn a backlash towards ICE. ICE right now, up until 2000, had generally had a good public perceptions, but right now there's a backlash, not just with immigrant activists and progressive activists, but your middle of the road folks saying, look, no government agency has a right to quote unquote disappear people. There needs to be due process. Any kind of mask, federal agencies, no matter what agencies for, sets a dangerous precedence. And if the administration wants a mass deportation plan, it's going to need the cooperation of cities led by moderate Democratic mayors. If they start saying we cannot cooperate with ICE in any operations because the public opinion is against them, then you have a problem. You're going to have another standoff.
All right, Russ Contreras, the justice and race reporter at Axios, covering policy, agencies at the heart of the administration of justice, and how it impacts people of color. Russ, thank you so much for being with us, and something tells me you'll be back on our air quite soon.
Good to be with you.
All right, Russ, thank you. All right, we'll be right back after this short break.